Hello and welcome to Sasquatch Talk. My name is Bradley Valentine. Today is March 24th. It's Tuesday. Spring is in full effect, and today we're talking about NATO. We're going to get into NATO, but let's introduce us. We got Dan Adams at the top right. We got Troy Miller at the bottom of your screen. We are the owners of Sasquatch Gun Oil, which Dan has to his left, I believe. That's his left. Yep.
It is. Look at you knowing directions on the computer with different recording stuff.
All right, today we're talking about NATO. We're going to talk about a little bit of history, but Troy wanted to discuss, is it really necessary? I guess my question would be, was it ever really necessary? But we'll get there. So let's start off with a little icebreaker. And going back to NATO started in 1949. And I want to know if you guys would live in a different time period where the world looked different technology. So you can't say the 80s, right? But a long time ago, generations ago, what time period would you live in? So Troy, I'll start with you. And maybe the answer is nothing. You wouldn't want to live in a different time period. But if you could, when and where?
Honestly, I wouldn't want to. I mean, if you look at human history, it kind of, regardless of what country and what time frame, it's all harder in the past than what it is currently. I mean, seriously, you could hop in your car, a car instead of a horse, drive 5 minutes down the road and buy literally anything you need or want and have the money to buy it, right? You got shelter, you got electricity, you got running water and plumbing and food.
Yeah.
Hey, the Romans had plumbing, dude.
Yeah, you're right. And some other, but they didn't have
they shared
electricity.
Sponges, so there was that weirdness going on. But...
Exactly, and they also made everything out of lead too, including their plates and bowls and
if you weren't a slave.
Everybody's still just as equally crazy, and we're not all eating out of lead. Look at that.
Yeah. But yeah, to answer that question, I wouldn't want to live in any other time frame, to tell you the truth.
All right.
That's an interesting question. Here's the deal, right? We talked about the Antikythera and all this other different technology that's out there. Why do we always assume that it was? I know that it was harder for the average everyday person, but even the poorest American is still 4 times wealthier than some of the poorest other people around the world, right?
Yeah.
So we're all used to a life of very much luxury comparatively, right? Mm-hmm. But sometimes we don't know exactly what that spelled out or where we would have been, right?
Yeah.
But I still maintain that God made us who we are for where we are for a reason. So I don't want to mess with that. I do think it would be pretty cool, though, to see what the heck kind of technology they had going on to be able to make that Antikythera and some of these other crazy things that they had, like the precision, right? That thing was put together. They had to use AI to finish it out. They couldn't even guesswork it together, even knowing what planets are out there and their current rotation, being able to build the model. We couldn't figure out how to build it. Now, in the same format, we had to use AI to figure it out when they built it with seemingly, Stone Age technology and only being able to ride horses. So we don't really know what it looked like.
All right. Interesting. For the sake of the conversation, obviously I think most people would rather live today. But I think I'm going to say 1910s, 1920s, when in the United States technology was booming. Obviously there were still problems, and I'm not going to act everything blah, 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 but just to see technology and the world, how it reacted at the time. There's still disease, the Spanish flu, World War I. But just to be able to see that world change, I think would be interesting. I
agree.
Yeah, I'm very interested in reading about that time period. My favorite president, Calvin Coolidge, was in the 20s. So it's just a very interesting time period. And
plus the Roaring '20s, right? You could have run moonshine and started NASCAR.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Right up to 1929.
Yeah.
There. I'll say there's a really funny Western And gosh, I wish I could remember the name of it. But at the end of the Western, somebody pulls up in a Model T,
Uh-huh.
and they're like, "Do you know where there's a general store and I could buy some gas?" And the guy's like, "What is that thing?" And he's like, "They call it an automobile." And he's like, "That'll never catch on."
Is that I don't know what that is. Huh.
I'll have to try to find it
Wild
or something
Wild
so we can
West,
put it in
maybe?
the comments. But
I'm
I don't know.
That's-
It's a pretty silly Western.
Cool. All right. Well, let's get into it. Today we're talking about the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. And I'm just going to put down some just like general facts about it. So that way, if you're not really sure what we're talking about, you can kind of catch up. Essentially, it's like a treaty, political, military organization. There's 32 countries in NATO. It was started in 1949. The idea was kind of to get everyone together, all these countries, and say, if you attack us, or if you attack one country, then you've attacked every country in this organization. It started right after World War II, obviously. The original 12 members were Belgium, Canada, Denmark, France, Iceland, Italy, Luxembourg, the Netherlands, Norway, Portugal, United Kingdom, and the United States. After the Cold War and during the Cold War, a bunch more countries were added. And today there are 32 countries. So I'll start with you, Dan. Troy and I were saying, like, Troy was like, what if we talk about NATO and, like, is it really necessary still? My question to you, Dan, is how necessary was it in 1949? Why did we need it 60 years ago or so? So I'll start there and we can go from there.
That was the I'm trying to remember the name of it, but basically it was against Russia. Let me rephrase.
Soviet Union.
The Soviet Union.
Yep.
Right. And the spheres of influence, as it were, because they were wholeheartedly communist. I think that was Lenin, right? At that time, I can't remember.
Stalin.
That was Stalin.
Stalin.
Yeah.
Stalin.
Yeah.
Sorry. And so they were worried about like another Germany happening.
Right.
Right. That's what they were really convinced was going to happen, and that's really what started the Cold War. That depends on if you're not a really deep-seated conspiracy theorist and think that all these countries, when you look at their expansion after 49, like NATO had to happen to drum up, when there's not an actual conflict. Well, how do you justify a new round being manufactured and more guns to, defeat the perceived threat? If you don't have a common enemy, you don't have enough people to band together to buy all the things that you're making. And that's, from what I researched, that's really when the military complex, like really, that machine really started up.
Yeah.
So I think probably not as necessary as it was portrayed, just like with everything that goes in the media. Not extremely necessary, however, sold as a package deal to kickstart all those economies after the war.
Okay.
Because, all those countries had, making munitions and rounds and guns and getting scrap steel and everything they could for the war effort. And then you just stop, and now you got, hundreds of thousands of people with no job that all had jobs. And now they're like, oh, stop making tanks. We just like flip over to making Jeeps and Chryslers. No, like they had to figure out how to keep it going. Some people didn't want to lose their booming war business of making guns and tanks and Jeeps and whatever else.
All right. Troy, does Dan's theory hold any water from your perspective?
Sure, I can see the economic component of it, but like if reading about NATO's history, they specifically talked about the three reasons to have it in the first place was to stop the Soviet expansion, but to have it undermined or underpinned by American troops. The whole goal by the European NATO nations in 1949 was to have a large American military presence in Europe.
Yeah.
Because they knew, and it was to counter the Soviet Union and to stop the spread of communism. So they knew without NATO, without America, they would have had the fear of a Soviet invasion into further Western Europe from Eastern Europe would have been a real potential. So I feel like the need for it, and the U.S. had a common interest to stop the spread of the Soviet Union,
Right.
After World War II. Yeah.
Right.
So in that common interest, I could see that there was a need for it at the time. When the Communist Union or when the Soviet Union fell in 91, that started to make me wonder, or that was kind of the point where it wasn't as necessary.
Yeah.
Because the Soviet Union collapsed. But then Russia was the sole legal successor. That's how Russia became on the Security Council, the United Nations Security Council, despite being one of the smallest, weakest countries and lowest economies. Now that they're tied up in that war in Ukraine, I don't know if they're absolutely necessary too. Because that was the whole threat, was the Soviet invasion of 10,000 tanks steamrolling Eastern Europe. Well, now all those tanks have been destroyed in Europe, in Ukraine.
Yeah.
So that threat's been destroyed, right? So now is it necessary
what's the point?
still?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you asked what's the point of them today? I mean, did it really do anything? So if you go to NATO's website and they have a key events section. Mm-hmm. So big things in the history of NATO. The first one obviously is 1949, and it talks about the 12 countries joining. The next key event is 1989, and it's the fall of the fall of the Berlin Wall, right? In
40
East
years.
Germany. And then the fall of the Soviet Union in 1991. They didn't do anything, if anything, you might have a theory about them keeping the war machine going, like Dan said, but they didn't do anything. So, the more you look into it, the more I'm like, what did they do? Throughout history, throughout the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, maybe we worked more on getting nuclear weapons and blah blah blah, but I'll ask you this: today, I sent you guys this article from the Epoch Times, and it said most NATO members won't join Iran operation. Trump essentially asked NATO to help keep the Strait of Hormuz open during the war in Iran, and they basically said, "Nah, we're good. We're not going to help."
Yeah.
Which whatever, but what's the point of them? So I guess we'll go to go ahead, Troy.
That's what I'm saying. What's the whole point? If it's not going to precede American interest anymore, then what's the whole point of us paying to be a part of it?
Right.
And you're right. It is more a political entity than a military defensive entity. You look at someone like Denmark. They don't pay. A lot of these other countries don't pay that 2% or 3%. But that you have these other politicians like Bernie Sanders talking about using them as an example, how their citizens get free education, free healthcare.
Yeah.
They call it democratic socialism. Well, if the U.S. pulled out of NATO, Denmark wouldn't just have that defense gone. They would have to then invest into their own defense, which is going to be well over 10%, not the 2%, which is going to eat into their free education, free and healthcare benefits. The American taxpayer underpins that. They subsidize that and provide for it. Yeah, because we're covering their defense. It's ridiculous. It's a major waste of money.
So, Dan, let me ask you this. Let's say you take over as president. Do you pull out of NATO? If so, how long do you take to do it?
I don't say we pull out.
Okay.
But we rework the funding and we rework what do you say? We're going to get down to brass tacks.
Okay.
We figure out what we do a analysis of it, and
Not
with
it.
all of the intelligence community that we have, and
Yeah.
as the president, the things that are at your disposal, right? You get a conference together and figure out, are we dragging NATO around, or if NATO if it were a vehicle gets a flat tire, are we the only one changing the tire and everybody else stays in the truck?
Right,
Or
right.
are people going to get out and help, and you know are they going to help? Are we the only one pulling this stupid truck out of the mud, or are other people getting out and helping with it?
Sure.
You can see as you read through it, and anything that talks about NATO, it's usually, just the financial facts on the US versus NATO, right? This one was from 2025. These guys, try to remove personal bias and analyze it and everything, but what they're in a bill from the Oval Office 32, that like nobody else is increasing their spending for NATO, but we are,
Right.
right? And like something like, what does this say? United States is the largest contributor to NATO's defense spending, accounting for approximately 16% of the total.
Yeah, it was 15.9 in 2025. It actually in 2026 went down to 14.9. So,
Okay.
basically 1 year of 1% drop.
So back to what I said about it being a money thing, NATO's budget, despite having an economy that's so we give 16, you said it went down to 14, right? But NATO's budget is 55% larger than the entire European Union.
Huh. Really?
Yeah.
That's not small.
Yeah.
Right.
So you're saying we pay what then?
I'm saying, oh man, I'm having a battery issue with my computer. That's cool. Not cool.
That's all right.
I'm saying that if I'm the president, we're figuring out how to fix this budget issue. That's what I'm saying.
So, I mean, what leverage I guess I'll go to you, Troy. Like, what leverage does the U.S. hold to be able to just say we're paying less, Like, where instead of paying 15%, I want to pay 1/30.
Well, we could say we're paying none.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, isn't it a voluntary organization? Like,
sure.
You're not. None of those countries are being forced into it.
Right.
They all wanted to be a part of it, which should mean there should be voluntary exit too if a country no longer sees it necessary.
Well, I guess the question would be, okay, if we pull out of a treaty voluntarily, right? Does that put us at like risk, like military risk?
For the United States, I don't think so. I think it would for Europe, for the European countries. Iceland, for example, they don't have a military. They have some self-defense forces, but they don't actually have a standing army.
Who?
Iceland. And they're one of the founding members. Yeah, one of the founding members of NATO.
Yeah.
So isn't it supposed to be a military bloc, a military organization?
Right.
How can a country without a military be a part of it? Now, that's that free defense.
Yeah.
Free, free, I don't know what they call it, but it's that free defense.
Right, right.
Some politicians have talked about.
So here's my thought is like why, like what are we getting out of it, right? Like we talk about all this stuff all the time. What do we get out of it?
That's what I'm saying. We're paying for all of the defense. Basically, it allows students and young people in Europe to get free education and free healthcare because they don't have to spend that. Their countries don't have to spend for their own defense.
Right.
They rely on America, right? But what do we get out of it? And maybe during the Civil War, it was that presence in America to confront the Soviet Union because it was the big common enemy.
Right.
But now that that's gone, what do we get out of it? So like Dan was saying, if the bus gets a flat tire and then there was only one person getting out and
Yeah.
no one else just everyone stays on the bus.
Yeah.
In a NATO application, what if China were to attack Guam,
Yeah.
right? Because that's that next big hypothetical.
Mm-hmm.
And the U.S. invokes Article 5
Right.
of NATO. What kind of help would we get from NATO in that conflict?
I guess like
From those European countries.
right. Like we know Iceland isn't going to fly over there and help because they can't, but is the United Kingdom, is Germany?
Right. The big ones, France.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, I guess I'll ask you the same question that I asked Dan. If you were president, would you pull out of NATO?
Again, like he was saying, basically an audit, do an audit, see if it's worth it. Obviously you got to look at the geopolitics of at the time, but I would do a series of stress tests, see what membership gets you, the benefits of paying for it,
right,
versus just pulling out. Because I mean, so the military not targets, but the strategies, the politics that for the military has changed, right?
Yeah.
The common enemy is no longer the Soviet Union. It's probably Southeast Asia,
Sure.
right? The U.S. doesn't need to have as much military presence in Europe anymore,
right.
which means we could pull out of NATO and then enter into independent security agreements with certain countries. That would be cheaper, We would, and pulling out of NATO would relocate a lot of troops from European bases, which means not only are they paying for NATO, the U.S. is paying for NATO, each base they have, they're paying rent to that host nation. And then the troops being there are getting COLA, right? Cost of living adjustment or allowance. And then they go out and spend that money on those local economies around those bases where the American troops are stationed. If we pulled out all of that money would be saved too.
What?
And just enter into independent agreements.
Okay, I guess you said like, what are we getting out of it if they don't have any troops? Wouldn't it make more sense? Let's say Iceland, who doesn't have a large military or whatever, wouldn't it make sense if they paid our troops, right? Like if I have an investment, I'm expecting, like if I'm putting out money, I'm expecting some sort of income. So our investment is like American soldiers in our lives, right? So why don't they pay us to do it? I don't know. Maybe I just don't get it.
No, that's a valid point. Why aren't they paying us to have our troops in their country? It's basically renting our troops instead of us renting their base.
Yeah.
Right. Especially if where they're at is going to be where their defense position is going to be in those host nations.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? I think I could see the desire to have that common defense.
Yeah.
But the way NATO has been built up to in the last several decades, especially since 91.
Right.
I just don't know if it's worth it anymore at least for the Americans.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. Oh,
looks like Dan got his computer plugged back in. Yeah. So what are your thoughts though, Bradley?
I guess my thoughts are I want to know what we're getting out of it. Dan, welcome back. We were just here's a quick summary of what we were talking about.
What you missed.
Like the idea of like, what is the United States getting out of this today? So I asked Troy the same question, like if he was president, what would you do? And he said he would audit it like you. I want to know what we're getting out of this. And my idea is like...
Yeah, I think the audit would reveal that,
Right.
Yeah. That'll make it more obvious whether we should stay or leave. Yeah.
Yeah.
But my thought is like, why are we paying money to help like our troops to help make Europe secure, right? So maybe
they're not just in Europe though. They're all over the place. Like they were in Haiti, but what they were doing in Haiti was just taking naps on tanks.
Sure, yeah.
Talking about the NATO troops?
Yeah.
But I guess my point is why are we spending our money for our troops if our troop is the investment, right? Like our investment is our physical presence, our strong military.
I mean, it's like spreading out the dent, right? Like the three of us, let's say we wanted to buy a car that we were going to use for our business, or a truck for our gun oil business, right? One of us could spend all of the money on it and then be like, well, here's all these stipulations if you guys want to use it, or we could split it three ways. And then, we all have equal investment in this commodity, right? And that's what the supposed thought process is behind it, is to get the buy-in from all these other countries where we're helping out with, right? Yeah. To keep evil at bay, right? The whole premise stems from the axis of evil. And when, lots of people were like, actually, we're going to defeat the United States once and for all.
You're right.
But it didn't go that way, That also depends on all the optics, and like, was Pearl Harbor meant they were going to launch a full scale invasion of the U.S.? After World War II, there was subs that made it to our shores, and some Nazi type folks that made it onto U.S. soil in different places.
Yeah,
there's a lot of things that happened in World War II. There's a lot of theories out there and things, but supposedly it's supposed to be, when you got more friends on your side than you do enemies, it's harder for the enemies to get big enough to defeat all of you.
Right. They call that the force multiplier. It's a strategy the Pentagon uses. Yeah.
Okay. So this will kind of go with what you were saying, Dan. Really quickly, I threw it in AI. I said, what does the U.S. get out of being in NATO? And this is the answer. Now, this is an AI answer, so, take it for what you will. The United
Which AI?
Huh?
Which AI? Grain of electrons.
Grok.
Which one?
XAI.
Grok. Okay, Grok.
The United States gets significant strategic, military, economic, and political benefits. It's often described by U.S. officials and analysts as a force multiplier that amplifies American power at a relatively low additional cost, rather than a one-way subsidy to Europe. So I'll just go over a couple quick notes here. Military and security advantages, collective defense and deterrence. Article 5, which you brought up, Troy, has been invoked only once since it was essentially 9/11 to invade Afghanistan. Global power protection and basing. Essentially, we get to put our troops all over the world. Economic benefits, stable trade environment. Don't get me started on this. Arms sales.
Hey, that stable trade sounds a lot like what was it I was saying?
Well, the next one is arms sales and industry boost, which is many NATO allies buy U.S. weapons, aircraft. Broader prosperity, so post-Cold War NATO enlargement helped integrate former Eastern Bloc countries. Here's the thing about this, and I guess like, I don't know, like we went through the 90s with Operation Desert Storm, but essentially we didn't have much military conflict. Even that was like a 6-week military.
No, it was longer. It was longer than 6 weeks. I was like, it was longer.
The total operation was about the total war was about 6 weeks, but they kept troops there for well past that. Closer to
but I'm just talking about like the actual 43 days. I'm talking about like
6 weeks.
The war part, right? Then we had...
That was the short one.
I hate how they define the war part anyways, right? It should be landing, withdrawal.
Sure.
Yeah, I agree.
Enter rebuild phase, but they don't like hard lines because it's bad for business.
My point is, in the 90s, we didn't have much like military conflict ongoing.
The Kosovo bombings.
So we had 2000.
Kosovo happened in the 90s. There was quite a few things. It just wasn't
wars.
U.S. concentric.
Let me make my freaking point here, okay?
Yeah.
In the 2000s, we had massive, long Afghanistan-Iraq war, right? Like, essentially, we just pulled out of Afghanistan during Biden's term, like 4 years ago or whatever. In Iraq, we pulled out, I think, during
2011.
Obama's term.
2011
Yeah.
was the last year.
So very long wars. I guess my point is, like, today we have discussions, and a lot of it comes from President Trump, like tariffs. Tariffs are all about bringing jobs and American stability in our economy. You can argue whether or not you think it's effective, fine, but that's the idea, is like, essentially the world has massive tariffs on the US, where like they're charging us a lot of money to send our stuff to them. And again, you can argue whether you like it or not, but President Trump's trying to reverse that. Then we have like less military conflict, but we get involved in Iran. So like my mind is coming is like, what does the US get out of Iran? What does the US get out of tariffs? What does the US get out of NATO? So I guess my point is like, are the benefits enough? And I'll go to you, Dan. Are the benefits
Worth the
enough
cost.
of what we know? Let's say there is no audit, right? Like, what those benefits I read off to you, are those enough to spend hundreds of millions of dollars in NATO to be involved?
That depends on which side of the financing you're on.
Let's say your point is to get the most for the United States, the most overall benefits.
Well, then you could, because you wouldn't have to have all your people scattered around the globe. You could have a rotational force where you get those 32 countries, right? That's essentially 32 people, right? Then you pick 10 people from each country, right? So then you add a 0 on that, right? So now you got 320. Not 320 Americans, 32 Americans.
Okay.
But you have 320 people all together when it's 10 people from each region, But we have to remember, some of those regions don't have the same population to draw from that we do.
Or even a military presence at all, because like when you're gone, Troy was talking about Iceland doesn't even have
None.
an official military, like no army, no navy, no air force. So
it's a benefit to them, and we could look at it as like we're not essentially the world police, like some people put it, but like the hired help, right? But if that's the case, if you don't have a military, you don't have the backing. If you can't lift something, you have to get something bigger to lift it, right? So you either have to buy a piece of equipment or hire someone that can lift it.
So I still
Right.
don't
You're spending
understand
the
what
money.
the US gets. I get what Iceland gets. What do we get?
Well, what we should get, if we went through it, is we should get paid for our time that we put into these other countries, whether it be protection or whatever, right? And they should have to pay for that presence if they're not going to have people in there.
Right.
So you work the ratios with either you put in the labor or you put in the funding. That's what you get. Labor, funding.
Yeah.
Right?
Troy?
So if you put in more labor,
yeah,
you don't have to put in as much funding, but that's not how they want to work it.
So that's an interesting example, because France came out shortly after NATO started, during the Cold War, so before the 90s. They basically demanded that American troops be relocated outside of France, but they still wanted to be a part of NATO and have that defense. The president at the time of France was so aggressive about it that when one of the reporters asked him about the American lives that were lost and that grave during World War I, those crosses and all those American flags.
Yeah.
What's the French going to do about that? Because he said he wanted all Americans out.
Okay.
And the president was just biting his lip, not answering. Like, it would have been a bad sign to dig up those graves and relocate them.
Right.
He really didn't like the idea of having it. So it goes back to that, what America should get out is we should get paid for it. And if they don't want us there, we should leave. But they have to understand the contribution that they've already paid, especially in blood.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. If you two were advising me today on whether or not I should be in NATO, I would say you guys convince me that we shouldn't be. Like, because I really don't get what we get out of this. Here's what I think. Because I have to think, if I'm the president, what are we getting out of this first and foremost? Remember when during the State of the Union, President Trump essentially tricked every Democrat to looking like a dirtbag by saying, stand up if you believe that the American government should serve American citizens first. Their main priority should be to serve American citizens and not illegal immigrants. Every Republican stood up, every Democrat sat down, right? So if I have that mentality, like I want to serve the U.S. first, I just don't know what it is. Like the only two things I could think is, one is stability, like what will happen if we pull out, right? So the threat of a potential big war. And two is that we kind of get to be a bully in a sense, like I'm in your country, I'm in your country. Like I kind of get to be in charge.
I'm going to do what I want.
But that's, I don't know.
But we're not running.
Is it worth it?
We're not the head of NATO, but so we have to think about it this way. Are we set up in such a way that we could go back to being an industrial giant, meaning mining all of the stuff from America?
Yeah.
All of our oil comes from America.
Right.
Are we going to stop all imports? Can we grow enough food here with the seasons that we have to support us?
Sure. Yeah. I mean,
our entire country.
So you're saying
because
that...
if we pull out, right, we stop getting fruits and vegetables from Brazil and Mexico.
Yeah.
Right. If all that trade, it's going to cost us more because we pull out. Right.
Pull out. You're talking about NATO. So how would pulling out of NATO affect trade from like Mexico or Brazil?
Well, there's I can't switch over to the list of the countries right now, but I thought there were South American countries that were in NATO, right?
I think Canada and the US are the only two
American.
Yeah, it's Europe and North America. That is it. Europe and North America. Yeah.
So I see your point.
So maybe it won't affect, but they have NATO troops down there.
Yeah.
Don't they?
I don't know.
They have UN peace treaty troops, which are something very different.
Yeah.
And other like China has sent some UN peace troops.
So I guess
Africa,
we could look and see what our portion of UN is, right?
Yeah. So okay,
and then weigh that against NATO, because NATO was just a treaty between us and some European nations to fight Russia.
Right.
So
basically, it sounds like we're essentially held hostage to NATO. Like if you pull out, like we're not going to talk to you, we're not going to trade with you. Here's my thoughts. It's like, whose economy is going to hurt worse, us?
Theirs.
Or Germany, right? If we pull out and we stop trade with them, right? Because we already know, like, one thing people didn't understand about the tariffs, and this goes into it with trade, is what you're talking about, is that every single tariff that we had on other countries, or that we now have, they had at least that much on us, right? So every single person who's like, well, that's bad for the consumer, you can argue that, but then every single other country was making that same mistake because they were trying to do what we're trying to do, which is protect our internal economy from our jobs and our industries. And not saying that we should not trade at all, because trade is good, but the U.S. is full of a lot of resources because we have a giant landmass, right? We have oil, we have uranium, we have crops,
food.
We have everything we need. Again, I'm not saying we should just be like, screw it. But like if someone wants to hold us hostage and say, stay in or else we're not talking to you, I don't know. Like, are those my buddies?
No. Like, you wouldn't hang out with a person like that.
Right.
And the U.S. doesn't need NATO to do trade with other countries. Those countries need the U.S. more.
That's a good point. I mean, you still have Japan to trade with. You still have all of South America. You could get oil from Venezuela, which is where we get a lot of our oil. And
Yeah, you should look into where they get their oil from.
who, Venezuela?
Yeah,
I honestly don't know. Um, but
it's a long string to pull on, but they get a bunch of it from Russia.
that makes sense.
Of
Yeah.
course.
A lot of oil comes from
But
Russia.
we're not buying oil from them.
Yeah. A
No,
lot
but
of
Europe is. Europe's buying a lot from them.
Yeah,
I don't
and they're
know.
also fighting them, right? So they're funding
Yeah.
their own battle.
Against them, yeah.
The more you guys keep talking, the more I'm like, we're being held hostage by this North American or Northern Atlantic Treaty Organization. Like we're essentially have a gun against our head. And
That's what it feels like.
I think it's more of like a landmine scenario, right? We've stepped on it. There's 32 people standing on this pressure plate.
yeah,
Who gets hurt worse if we jump off?
right.
all
you
at
know?
once. Yeah.
Finland joined in 2023. I think they're the latest to. No, Sweden.
And Sweden.
2024. Are they the last one?
Yeah, those are the last two. Because those both got they were largely neutral countries
Right,
for
right.
decades. And then Russia invaded Ukraine, and that was that catalyst
Good
that encouraged
point.
them to
Okay.
join NATO. Yeah, because Finland has fought wars against the Soviet Union.
Sure.
They allied with Germany, Nazi Germany, during World War II to fight the Soviet Union.
Yeah.
It was a democracy allied with Nazi Germany to fight the Soviet Union. It's very interesting.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, I guess to get to the end of our point, it is we've discovered that it is kind of like a landmine scenario.
Yeah.
We're all standing on it and holding it, right? But if we all jump back, there's going to be some collateral damage that happens. What does that look like?
Yeah.
Are we willing? Is the cost of continuing worth it to not have to find out what the collateral damage is going to be?
I don't know.
Does that look like does it look like an essential, like essentially leading towards a battle on our own soil?
Right. That's okay. That's what it looks like to me. Like it's like if there was a world war or a domestic war, that's really the reason why we don't want to get rid of NATO or pull out of NATO, is just in case there's a world war or a war on our land. You know, when you say that, Dan, it's like the landmine. You know what it makes me think of is some of the discourse around like the Epstein files has been like, if we just let it all out, no, like we don't black out any
No
names.
holds barred. Just let it all fly.
Yeah.
Unredacted.
Nothing's
Totally.
redacted. The thought, and this isn't
Yeah,
necessarily
they're worried
confirmed.
that they won't have enough room and the government will be disbanded.
Right. So the question is,
Hold
like,
the pin.
if we let this all out, it's going to burn everything down. My question is, like, if that's what we have to do, is that what we, like, do we burn it all down?
Right.
Or, like,
Yeah, I've said for a long time we're due for a hard reset any moment.
and I guess which comes first, NATO or the Epstein files? So
Yeah, because didn't that video, like some kind of video surfaced and now everybody's crapping each other's pants?
for what?
From the Epstein files, some kind of video just dropped recently,
I have
or was
no
played for Congress or something.
I don't know. All I know is we bombed Iran and
didn't
we
read
stopped
it.
talking about Epstein. So that's all.
Well, yeah, if you start a good war, you don't have to worry about what person in power, dabbled in
Right.
unspeakable acts.
Yeah. Okay, Troy. I'll ask you, and then I'll go to this. Troy, if you have a 50-50, you have a button, and 50% chance things get better, we spend less money, we have less troops around the world, the U.S. works on our economy and trade because we pull out of NATO, and it's a good thing, right? Like we're not held hostage to NATO anymore. But the other 50% chances, it starts wars because people, Russia or China or whoever sees that we're no longer organized. It burns it all down. Do you hit that button?
if the status quo is garbage, then yeah. I mean, if the status quo isn't cutting it anymore, you gotta change things up. Like Dan said, a hard reset. Maybe that 50-50 buttons that hard reset.
Okay.
The status quo. Yeah, if the status quo is no longer working, then yeah, you'd have to hit it.
I'm not
sure it's working anymore.
Yeah.
So with this NATO thing, right? I can't figure out why people don't see that private, and this kind of segues into a little bit of our business, right? I'll say that our gun oil works better than NATO. And then the private ownership of firearms is our biggest national security.
Yeah.
Right? The whole papers have been written by people that would love to scale a full-scale land invasion on us. They've drawn hard lines where they don't think they'll make it past just because of private gun ownership.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
They know that if they show up with troops, the kind of stuff they're going to have to invent to make it from the water onto the land, they're going to have to literally drop out of the sky or just like tunnel underneath us and pop up like moles.
Teleport. Yeah, because you can see them crossing the ocean regardless.
Yeah.
You see them from thousands of miles away.
Right.
Pop them out of the sky, before they get here.
So Dan, same question. You have a button. This button says we leave NATO. 50% chance that we're not held hostage by NATO anymore. We're able to dictate our own trade. We spend less money on troops in other places where we don't necessarily want them. 50% chance that it all blows up. Do you hit that button?
I say there's one more variable to that's unseen. You have to know who stands to lose the most money. And it's probably not the average American. It's somebody that has more money and more pull to care a lot more than the average American. I think the optics don't quite look how we think it looks. And so as the president, I say we do like a study, right? What's going to cause and effect if we pull out, and then we present that to NATO to get out of the hostage situation.
Yeah.
And then we decide if we push that button or not.
So the answer you have is no, you do not push the button.
I think you gotta.
You either push it or you don't. There's no other option.
Yeah.
Let's see what happens.
I think that Band-Aid is a little too close to the artery to be ripping it off as hard as I want to.
So I
say yes. I say yes, but you gotta prep the site first.
Okay. There's this movie called Unthinkable with Samuel L. Jackson. And I can't remember her name. The lady who plays Trinity in The Matrix. And there's this terrorist who says, like, I've set bombs in certain places around the city or the US or something. And so they capture this guy, and Samuel L. Jackson plays, like, I don't know who he is, but he's like a guy who like can extract information, if you know what I mean.
Okay.
So the name of the movie is Unthinkable. So the name of the idea of the movie is them trying to get this guy to tell us where the bomb is. At one point in time during the movie, Samuel L. Jackson brings in this terrorist's kids. And it's like, it gets really crazy. It's really intense. And the idea is like, if this bomb goes off, like kids are going to be killed. The city's going to burn down potentially. And the lady says, like, I don't care. Let the bombs go off and don't do unspeakable acts to these kids, right? Like, so.
Right. Yeah, it's the ultimate ethics.
Right.
Question,
it's the ultimate ethics. Now, I think that's like that sits with me, because in the end of the movie, she's like, I don't care. Let the bomb go off at this point. Like, who are we? And I think...
Yeah, the bad guy did the bad thing. We become the worst guy if we do the worst thing to save right?
Yes.
If we're going to try to stop the scales from tipping,
Yeah.
the bad guy already did the bad thing.
Yeah. So I guess my point is, I'm not saying that in NATO is like necessarily letting the bomb go off, and we're in that
Right.
exact scenario, and I don't pull my ethical beliefs based on movies, but just to use that analogy, I think my answer is I hit that button.
Yeah.
I hit the button. I say, what are you gonna do? No one none of these countries, unless they all ally together and attack us, none of these countries are gonna attack us.
No.
So go ahead, Troy.
Brad, would you now swap out NATO for UN? Does your answer change?
I don't know. I feel like the UN is even more like holding a gun to our head.
Yeah.
I feel like it's even worse.
That's even I agree. You're hitting that button harder at that
right,
point.
Right. It's like you're hitting it 3 times.
It's a double push button.
It's like you hit it multiple times, and each time the scenario is 50-50, which like the percentage goes up each time. I don't even know that NATO is even a 50-50 at this point. I really don't think it is.
Well, let me pose the question to you like this. If you push that button, we have to draft everyone 35 and younger. Everyone.
Especially if like a war against China, where we're leaving bodies.
Well, let's say it's worst case scenario and it's a war against everyone on the other side of NATO and the UN.
I mean, we still have the draft right now. We just don't enact it because we don't need it.
That's what I'm saying. We'll have to push it to 35.
Oh, okay.
Instead of 20 or 24, whatever the age was.
That's fine. Okay.
You're going to get millions of people trying to dodge the draft, though.
Yeah. I mean, we all three of us. I mean,
eventually they can dodge it enough, but if we don't draft enough people, they show up at our shoreline.
Yeah. Sure. We also have a massive size. It's not like we're this tiny, like Israel. Everyone has to serve in the military, right? But we have a massive 330 million people. Like, we're not as big as China or India, but that's a massive population. I think we'll be okay. We already have the draft. You're right. Like like every male signs up for the draft when he's 18 or whatever. I don't know. I pushed the button. Okay. Last thoughts.
That draft. If we were to pull out of NATO and to have a draft instead of NATO, but if you look at the counter, what if we did that Article 5 on NATO? We might get more help from the draft than the NATO.
That's
NATO troops.
That's actually a good point. Yeah.
Well, the idea is we're fighting the people in their home when we're not fighting them from ours.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. So
All right, we're basically out of time. So Dan, last 15 to 30 seconds. Keep it to 30 seconds max because we're out of time. What are your final thoughts?
All right. Everybody needs to be more read up on why we have the military and why it's important to care about why we have it. Because there's people out there that absolutely hate us just because you're American liberal, Republican, constitutionalist, Green Party. Let's say you're crazy and you want communism here in the United States. They still want you dead. It does not matter your political affiliation. The pure fact that you were born in America, there are people out there that want you dead.
Yeah.
And they don't understand that.
All right, we are out of time. Cue the music. Listen, as usual, we have not come to any major conclusions. I would push the button, Dan wouldn't push the button, and Troy would push the button. But that's all we got today.
I would hesitate just a little bit.
Go to SasquatchGunOil.org. That's right in front of you. That's all we have today. Adios.